Hey everyone. I got a question recently from someone who wanted to know because she said she has goats because she wants milk. And so she is curious whether she will get more milk if she dam raises or bottle feeds. And that's a little bit of a tricky question, the way that she worded it. Some people would say, oh, well, just take the kids away and feed a milk replacer, and then you can have all the milk. Even then, I would disagree that is the way to get the most milk because, especially if you're new, back when I got started in 2002, if you went into the Yahoo groups and said that you were dam raising, people treated you as an absolute second class citizen. Like, oh, you've got filthy diseased goats, you're lazy, you should be taking all those babies away at birth and bottle feeding them heat treated colostrum and pasteurized milk so that you don't pass on any diseases. And so I was really going against the trend because I wanted all my kids to be dam raised. And to do that, I tested. My goats were tested for CAE, CL, and Yonis. They all came from turds that were negative, and then we continued doing testing. And so I felt really comfortable with my kids being dam raised. What I used to see in those Yahoo groups is that there would be people who would get their goats and they wanted to do everything right. So they are listening to everybody else, right? They have never milked a goat in their life. So their goat's kid, they take the kids away and they try to start milking. And milk production is based on supply and demand. And if you don't know how to milk, you are not going to be demanding very much. And so that dough is going to dry up. By the time you learn to milk, her supply is going to be so pathetic that you're going to be wondering what's wrong with her. Like, it was so sad. This is why if you want to buy goats from me, if you want to buy a doe in milk and you have never milked a goat before, I will not sell you a doe in milk, because I had somebody get mad at me once because they're like, this goat's not making any milk. And luckily the person lived close to me. And I said, okay, well, why don't you come over when we're milking and, we can see how you're doing? Because I knew, I'm like, you're probably not getting her empty. And that's, and if you're doing that, like every day, her supply is going to go down because she's only going to produce enough to meet the demand. And so they came over, and the husband was the one who'd been milking. And he sat down and he milked one of our does, and he's like, all right, I got her empty. And he stood up, and my daughter sat down and was like, he'd only gotten like half of the milk. And he thought he had it all, but he'd never milked goats before, so he didn't know how to milk. So if you are brand new to goats, then you absolutely, and you want to get a lot of milk, then you need to let those kids nurse so that they can demand and mom will supply, because those kids are going to demand a lot more than you. Now, even if you do know how to milk, what we have found is on the very rare occasion when a doe's kids are dead at birth, or she rejects them, which is also very rare, that we need to milk her 3 times a day for at least the first 2 or 3 weeks. The more we can milk her 3 times a day, the better, because the supply really goes down if we are only milking 3 times or twice a day. And a lot of commercial dairies figured this out years ago, that they will get a lot more milk if they milk the cows 3 times a day than if they only milk them twice a day. So instead of every 12 hours, they milk every 8 hours. And so that's what we try to do as long as possible if we don't have kids nursing. So it's just, remember, it's all about supply and demand. And if the doe's body doesn't think that there's a big demand, it's not going to supply. So if you really want the most milk, then letting the kids nurse, because the kids nurse like every 15 minutes all day long, so the body is constantly getting the message, make milk, make more. The kids are hungry, make more milk. Now, of course, there is an upper limit. So I'm not saying you can, get as much as you want, whatever, but kids can demand a lot more than you can, because you're not going to be trying to milk them every 15 minutes. So, that is the most important thing to remember, is that, demand is all about supply and demand. If there's no demand, supply goes down. The other thing is that people think like, oh, well, when can I stop letting the kids nurse so I can have all the milk? So the other thing that we learned fairly quickly, probably only took us about 3 years to learn this, is that once you take the kids away, you are going to see a drop in milk production within a few days. And when I was working on the first edition of Raising Goats Naturally back in 2013, I found the research that explained why. And that's because when kids are nursing, it causes an oxytocin release. Oxytocin is the love hormone. And so when kids are nursing, the does release oxytocin, which causes the milk ejection reflex. And so if you've ever been milking a goat and felt like she was holding back on you, she probably was, but it wasn't on purpose. It was because you were not eliciting the oxytocin release, because she might love you, but she doesn't love you as much as she loves her kids. So this is why, you might think that, like you think you got all the milk, and then you let her out and the kids run up to her and the kids are nursing and they're getting more milk, because they're getting an oxytocin release. So what we found is, I think it was about the third year or so, is that we found that we took the kids away from the mom, that after about 3 or 4 days, her supply would start to go down. And thankfully, we put the kids back with mom and the supply went back up again. But we decided that we preferred to just never wean the does that we're keeping, or never wean any wethers until the day they're sold. They're all nursing as long as they're here. And when the doe, so we keep them, they're with mom during the day, and then we separate them overnight. We milk all the does in the morning. And we get almost as much milk doing that as we did when we were weaning kids, because of that big reduction in supply that we would see a few days after we took the kids away. So for us, it's very nice to only have to milk once a day instead of twice a day, and get almost as much milk. So it didn't make sense to us to milk twice a day to only get a small amount more milk. So anyway, that's really been fascinating. And if you, this is why it's important to keep track, keep good records and stuff, so that you can see how specific does do under specific circumstances. So I hope that this has been helpful. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.